Good morning. Welcome back to another broadcast of Morning Manna. I'm Thomas Ray, the lead pastor and founder of the Rock School of Ministry, where we're expanding God's kingdom one student at a time. If you're interested in learning more about us at the Rock School of Ministry, please avail yourself of our website at www.therocksom.com. That's www.therocksom.com. Now, let's get back to our study in the Gospel according to Luke. We're in the fourth chapter still. We're going to begin at the 16th verse. It's my aim to make it through the 30th verse. And today, normally, I would read the scripture first and then we go back and expound upon it. But since we seem to have quite a bit of ground to cover in our short morning moment, I want to kind of read and teach as I go. So here begins the reading and the teaching of God's holy word. In the 16th verse of the fourth chapter, it reads, "And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read." So after returning to the Galilean region, the noise has spread about him. Everybody in that region knows who he is. And then while in Galilee, he journeys home to his hometown, that is. He goes home and he goes to his home church. He goes to his home synagogue. And he stands up to read the word. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, which is the prophet Isaiah. And when he opened the book, he found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord." The title today is "Oh, the Spirit." I know so often the gospel according to John gets the credit for being a spiritual gospel, and it is. The purpose of it was not to be as geographical or as biographical, I should say, as Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The purpose of John's gospel was to be a spiritual gospel, was to bring about theological explanation. But I must admit to you, the gospel according to Luke is one spirit-filled book. Luke really here is revealing to us that when Jesus went to his home synagogue and he opened up the book of Isaiah and he read from the prophet Isaiah, this is from the 61st chapter of Isaiah, beginning at verse 1, chapter 61 of verse 1 of Isaiah. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." It wasn't so much of what he read as the way he read it. Because when he read it, Luke goes on to tell us that he closed the book and he gave it to the minister. And the minister went and sat down, and the eyes of all them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. This wasn't a dead service. And he began to say unto them, because they were waiting to hear what he would say about the scripture. They had heard the scripture read before, but they had not heard the scripture read the scripture. They had not heard the word read the word. They had not seen the living word reading the logos, the written word. And so here it is. Now, they still have not regarded him as such, but there's something so distinctly different about Christ that they are fixed on him. And he closes the book. He gives it to the minister. The minister then goes and sits down. Everybody in the synagogue, their eyes are fixed on him. And he began to say unto them, "This day is the scripture fulfilled in your ears." This day is the scripture fulfilled in your ears. That's what happened. People started looking around. The eyes went from him to them. And now they are looking around. And it says here that they wondered at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. Then they began to say, is this not Joseph's son? Is this not the carpenter's boy? How is the carpenter going to sit up here and say to us, and a carpenter's son say to us, that Isaiah's prophecy is fulfilled in their ears today? How is he aligning himself with that? And he said unto them, verse 23, ye will surely say unto me this proverb. In other words, he's saying, this is what you've been saying to me. You've been using this proverb pertaining to me. Physician, heal thyself. Whatsoever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in thy country. In other words, Jesus is saying to him, you all asked me to come here. You all heard what was going on in Capernaum. You all heard how people were being healed. You all heard how I was teaching in Capernaum, because Capernaum is where Jesus lived as an adult. As a grown man, he lived in Capernaum. And he's saying to them, you all called me here. And the way he uses rhetoric. Jesus is a master rhetorician. There is no better. And he says here, you say unto me, in other words, you use this proverb in reference to me, physician, heal thyself. Whatsoever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in thy country. In other words, come home to your homeland and minister to us the way you are to the people in Capernaum. Now it's all in Galilee. They're all in Galilee. And so like Galilee would be the region or the state, if you will. So like I'm in the state of Texas. So it would be as if they heard about Jesus preaching in Dallas and they invited him back to Houston, where he was from, to come preach there too. And they want him to do in Houston what he's doing in Dallas. That's what this basically is. They want him to do in Nazareth what he is doing in Capernaum. And he's rehearsing to them what they said about him first. And he says to them in verse 24, verily I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. And look at what he does. He says, but I tell you of a truth. He takes them on a biblical survey. Many widows were in Israel in the days of Elias, when the heavens were shut up 3 years and 6 months, when great famine was throughout all the land. But unto none of them was Elias sent, save unto Sarepta, a city in Zidon, unto a woman that was a widow. And many lepers were in Israel in the time of Eliseus, which is Elisha, the prophet. None of them were cleansed, saving Naaman the Syrian. Now, if you look at the examples that he gives, it's very true. But the people that he uses would cause the people in Nazareth to be offended. Because when he goes in verse 25 and he says that there was a famine during the time of Elijah, and Elijah wasn't sent to any of the widows except to a widow in Zidon. Zidon's not a part of the land of Israel. That's a foreign country. So he's saying Elijah was in his own country, and in his own country, God didn't send him to any of those widows. He sent him out of the country to a widow in Zidon. And then he says here about Elisha, he said there were many lepers at this time, but God didn't send Elisha to the lepers in Israel. No, he sent him and healed a Syrian by the name of Naaman. So what Jesus is proving to them is that when the Jews fall short, God sends his ministers unto the Gentiles. And all, verse 28, and all they in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath. See, they got offended. And rose up and thrust him out of the city and led him unto the brow of the hill whereon their city was built, that they might cast him down headlong. They wanted to throw him off the side of the mountain. They wanted to kill him. They invited him home. They didn't like his sermon, so they wanted to kill him. But he, passing through the midst of them, went his way. the text. Oh, the Spirit. When you are led by the Spirit, you will tell the truth. When you are led by the Spirit, the Lord will open the scriptures to you in a way that He doesn't open to those who just read it in their flesh. When you are led by the Spirit, you're going to have some contention. Away with this silly skipping through the tulips doctrine where you get saved and you get Spirit filled and everything is great. No, it's not. People in your hometown don't like you too much sometimes. Sometimes they'll thrust you out. Question, are you led of the Spirit? Has your preaching of the truth, your discipling and teaching the truth, offended the religious? Just a question. Not that I'm telling you to go out and upset everybody in your home church. But what I am saying is when you go forth, are you telling the truth? And are you telling the truth as the Spirit utters it? Because if you are, doubtless you will come across contention. And when you see that contention, you glorify your God. Just go through the midst of them and go on your way. I'm Thomas Ray, the lead pastor and founder of the Rock School of Ministry, where we're expanding God's kingdom one student at a time. This has been another broadcast of Morning Manna. God bless and keep you this day. And may you be a great discipler of men, women, boys, and girls. God bless you. Bye-bye now.